He made the whole country laugh every night, but behind the desk, The Tonight Show was a pressure cooker. For 3 decades, Johnny Carson kept the late-night world in stitches, but there were nights the studio fell silent, moments so awkward, so explosive, or so inexplicable that producers quietly tried to bury them. Some were on-air confrontations, some were backstage meltdowns, some vanished into legend. Over the next hour, or however long it takes you to watch this, we'll walk through the 14 most surprising, uncomfortable, and sometimes bizarre Tonight Show moments that producers hoped no one would remember. Ready? Let's start with the man himself. Johnny Carson was born October 23, 1925 in Corning, Iowa, and grew up fascinated with showmanship. A book about magic ignited that fascination when he was 12, and the kid who bought a magician's kit would go on to invent personas and skits that millions came to know by heart. He practiced with a ventriloquist dummy on Navy ships during World War II, honed his timing in college radio, and eventually moved west to Los Angeles, where small gigs became television opportunities. When he took over The Tonight Show from Jack Paar in the early 1960s, he didn't just inherit a time slot, he reshaped late-night TV. He created characters like Karnak the Magnificent, perfected monologues that felt like nightly rituals, and became the standard by which future hosts measured themselves. He was adored, admired, and carefully managed, which is exactly why a handful of live moments cut through the polish and revealed something else entirely, a brittle edge beneath the charm. Below the list, each a small drama in itself, sometimes funny, sometimes ugly, sometimes simply weird. Each one could have been a footnote. Together they sketch a more complicated picture of an entertainer who lived inside his own machine. 1. The Lost Episode. Vanished, then whispered about. Imagine an episode that aired once and then disappeared from the record. No reruns, no transcripts, no surviving footage, just a blank space on the show's timeline that has fed conspiracy for decades. Some researchers say the night dissolved into a catastrophic guest meltdown. Others whisper of a political tirade or a backstage collapse that bled onto the set. Whatever happened, NBC treated it like a stain. By the next day, it had been scrubbed from schedules and buried in silence. That silence is its own story, a reminder that live TV can produce secrets no archive can explain. 2. Joan Rivers. Mentor-turned-enemy Joan Rivers was a rising star Johnny had helped early in her career. For years, she was a favorite, even the occasional guest host. Then, in the mid-1980s, Rivers accepted a contract with a new network to launch her own late-night show. She kept the deal quiet until it was nearly finished. She says she feared the network would pull the offer if she told Carson too soon. When the news broke, Carson felt betrayed. He hung up the phone during a call with her and reportedly cut her out of The Tonight Show for good. The split was icy and long-lasting. An entire friendship and professional bond folded into silence. The real sting wasn't just pride, it was the sudden collapse of a mentor-protege relationship that had been on national television for years. 3. Wayne Newton. When jokes become threats, late-night ribbing can be funny until it targets someone's life. Wayne Newton, one of the era's most visible entertainers, found himself the butt of recurring jokes about masculinity. The cracks widened until Newton, fed up, confronted Carson in NBC's offices. Accounts vary, but the reported exchange is unforgettable. Newton demanded the joke stop, and some versions say he threatened violence. Carson didn't back down, and Newton's appearances on the show ceased. It's a moment that shows how much power a host had over a guest's public image, and how a nightly gag could become a career wound. 4. Charles Grodin. The guest who said the quiet thing out loud. There are interviews that are comfortable and others that are electric. Then there are the ones that feel like a scalpel. Actor and comedian Charles Grodin had a talent for deadpan provocation, and on one Tonight Show appearance, he did something unexpected. He asked Johnny, plainly and without humor, whether he cared about his guests. For a man famed for unflappable charm, the question landed like a thrown stone. Silence followed. For a few seconds, the air in the studio was not comedy, but raw confrontation. Producers reportedly debated cutting the clip from reruns, worried it punctured an image they'd curated. But Carson let it stand. The moment remains disturbing precisely because it made the audience wonder what was real and what was performance. 5. Shelley Winters versus Oliver Reed. A drink thrown, a line cross-lived television can be combustible when personality and provocation collide. On one notorious night, actress Shelley Winters lost patience with off-color remarks from actor Oliver Reed. According to multiple accounts, Winters rose, grabbed her drink, and hurled it into Reed's face. The audience gasped, the cameras kept rolling. The clips circulated later, and even if it was trimmed in some rebroadcasts, the image endures, a veteran actress standing up to behavior she found intolerable. It's a raw reminder that sometimes guests become the story, and the host becomes powerless to contain the fallout. 6. Animal chaos. When the set fought back, The Tonight Show loved offbeat animal segments, but not every creature kept its part. One night, a monkey grabbed at a guest in a way that startled the audience. Later, a snake slipped free of its handler and slithered across the stage. Johnny, famously squeamish around certain animals, began to back away, visibly shaken. You can always edit out a joke that bombs. You can't edit live animals suddenly deciding to be actors. The crew moved fast. Producers later clipped the wilder moments from reruns, but the audience saw something real. A host pushed off his balance by the unpredictable. 7. The cat line that never happened. A comedy urban legend comedians trade in double entendres, and Johnny's career spawned its share of tall tales. One of the show's most famous myths, an exchange in which a guest allegedly asked Johnny whether he wanted to pet her pussy, and he replied, "Sure, move the cat." Hilarious image. Only one problem. There's no authenticated tape, no transcript, and no contemporary account confirming it happened on air. It's become a classic example of how collective memory invents scenes to fit a persona. The legend survives because it's precisely the kind of line people imagine Johnny would have delivered, which makes it more revealing about our memory than about the show. 8. Forgetting the monologue. When perfection cracks open, even the most practiced comic can lose his thread. In December 1988, a pager in the audience and offstage commotion sent Johnny's timing tumbling. He forgot the setup, tried again, then just began to laugh, openly, uncontrollably, and infectiously. For a host who made control seem effortless, the moment was disarming. Instead of pretending nothing happened, he surrendered to it, turned it into material, and the audience loved him for it. Producers fretted about polish. Johnny refused to cut the messy humanity. That choice, more than any tightly rehearsed joke, is why those who loved him did so. He could be supremely in command and utterly human at once. 9. Don Rickles, a roast that backfired on the host. In a good way, insult comedy is a dangerous art, and Don Rickles was its consummate master. On one electric night, Rickles launched a relentless, affectionate barrage at Johnny. Digs at his wealth, his romances, even his sidekick Ed McMahon. Johnny was usually the one dishing, not receiving, and watching him squirm, wince, and then laugh was irresistible television. The exchange became one of the show's great moments because it flipped the hierarchy. The guest was the aggressor and the host the target. It proved how risk, when it lands, can produce pure live entertainment. 10. Twister and the flirtation that sold a game. Who would have guessed a weird board game would become a pop culture phenomenon because of late-night flirtation? During an early game of Twister with actress Eva Gabor, the show's playful energy tipped into something more suggestive. The game forced a closeness that registered on camera. A dress shifted, a laugh became a gasp, and suddenly Twister flew off store shelves. Producers later trimmed some of the more eyebrow-raising moments for repeats, but the night stands as proof that television can manufacture trends, and that an awkward, slightly racy moment can become an accidental cultural hit. 11. Tiny Tim's wedding. Spectacle that blurred lines. It should have been a novelty, and it was Tiny Tim marrying Miss Vicky on national television. Yet the spectacle felt enormous. 10,000 tulips, a kazoo of headlines, and tens of millions of viewers tuning in. For one evening, The Tonight Show was not a talk program but a ceremony, and Johnny played it straight, professional, and puzzled, the perfect host for a moment both genuine and utterly strange. Critics inside the building worried it crossed a line, But ratings didn't care. The episode captured something odd about television's power to transform intimacy into spectacle. 12. Exposing Peter Popoff. When satire met investigation, Johnny's background as a magician made him a natural skeptic, and one of the show's most consequential moments was not a joke, but an exposé. Televangelist Peter Popoff claimed to receive divine messages during healing crusades. A skeptic on the show revealed the trick. Popoff was getting real-time information through an earpiece fed by his wife, who had details from audience prayer cards. On air, tapes were played back, and the studio went quiet. The segment didn't just embarrass one minister. It helped a national conversation about fraud, faith, and accountability. It was late-night television transfigured into public interest journalism, and it landed with seismic fallout. 13. Raquel Welch walks off. When glamour met grievance, some interviews deteriorate from banter to battle. On one tense night, Raquel Welch, fed up with what she felt were condescending barbs, walked off mid-interview. The audience sat in stunned silence. Johnny, usually quick with a comeback, looked shaken. NBC reportedly pulled the segment from future broadcasts, a quiet attempt to bury a moment where a star's dignity and a host's tone collided live. It's one of those scenes that remind you, even the most polished TV can expose raw nerves in public. 14. Veto power and the burned tapes. Control over a legacy behind the laughter was a man fiercely protective of his image. Johnny had the power to block reruns of episodes that embarrassed him. Engineers and producers have recounted how shows were shelved at his insistence. The story darkens when you hear that in the early 1970s, a chunk of the show's tape inventory, a portion of a 1960s catalog, was reportedly discarded when storage space was reclaimed. Whether by accident or indifference, the loss felt like an erasure of a cultural moment. For Johnny, who insisted on control, the vanished footage was personal, a gap he would mourn, even if the public would never know exactly what was lost. What do these moments, taken together, reveal? Not simply a list of scandals or slip-ups, but a portrait of live television itself, a place where the polished and the precarious meet every night. Johnny Carson built an empire of timing and charm. But that empire sat on a live, rickety stage where animals misbehaved, guests rebelled, egos clashed, and occasionally a tape vanished into the dark. The tension between the show's glossy veneer and the messy human lives inside it is what makes these stories compelling. If there's a final note to take away, it's this: The Tonight Show was a machine for making cultural moments, sometimes intentionally, sometimes by accident. Johnny's genius was to make those moments feel effortless. His humanity was visible whenever the effort slipped. He could be merciless and tender, icy and warming, distant and disarmingly honest. Those contradictions are part of what keeps us watching the clips, telling the myths, and arguing over what was scripted and what was real. Thanks for sitting through the secrets, the awkwardness, and the small triumphs. If this dive into The Tonight Show's buried moments left you curious for more, drop a comment with the moment you'd most want to see the clip of, or tell us which Tonight Show legend you think deserves a full episode. If you enjoyed this, hit like and subscribe for more deep dives into the strange and unforgettable moments of television history.